You're listening to the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast. I'm your host, Dr. April Moreno. I'm a public health specialist focused on integrative wellness and autoimmune living, supporting the community of women, where I help you to live your best quality of life through being your best self-advocate. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 68 of the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast. I'm Dr. April Moreno, and I appreciate that you're here and joining us today and listening in as we talk about integrative wellness and mindfulness. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I hope you've had some time to get out there in nature, enjoy the forests, enjoy the ocean, enjoy time with nature, relaxing in the sun, all of those wonderful things. I have been social distancing and have not yet gone out far from my neighborhood, to be honest with you, because of the COVID issues. And I'm still really trying to get a clearer understanding of safety procedures and practices. I've heard various things about public restrooms and how virus can be spread through a toilet flushing in a restroom and how those particles are still in the air. So these are things that I don't even want to deal with. And so we don't go very far on road trips at all. We'll go somewhere that's like down the street and then come back, because the last thing I want is to worry about going into a public facility. Many of us have different layers and different levels of comfort with what we are okay with doing. And that's fine. You know, whatever you feel safe and intuitively connected with is wonderful. Yeah, so I pretty much stay away from a lot of public spaces because it's just a lot to think about for me and it's exhausting. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the power of mindfulness and the journey that I've gone through and how mindfulness can help others along the autoimmune journey. I'm just enjoying nature right now. I'm looking out my window. This plant is finally just blooming abundantly with pink hibiscus. It's really beautiful. I'm just noticing all the birds outside, the squirrels and the wind and the breeze. And I talk about this because this is a mindfulness practice. This is a way of doing mindfulness. There are many ways: noticing, observing, appreciating, and being present in the current moment. So my dog is super mindful. He loves to sit and watch the breeze hit the leaves, and he watches the birds. He's maybe the most mindful person I know. So on Wednesdays, we do a meditation exercise, and it's free with a option to donate to the Autoimmune Community Institute. We do those Wednesdays at noon. This week's going to be our second of the 8-week series on mindfulness. In each of these 20-minute meditation exercises, we cover mind, body, spirit, and environment in different weeks for mindfulness, awareness, and getting personal, intuitive insights into our lives. So join us on Wednesdays for our Summer Mindfulness Sessions at noon Pacific. And you can find out more information at aprilmorenophd.com/coaching sessions. Today, I wanted to tell you about this mindfulness experience and the journey that it has brought me through. Many years ago, before my diagnosis, I would just have these moments at night with anxiety where my brain just felt like it wouldn't stop. It just kept buzzing. I just had constant active brain activity. And it was actually very scary because at night I'm trying to sleep and my brain just felt like it would not calm down. It was constantly active at a high level. And I'm not sure what wavelength that would have been, but it's very active sometimes, and I find it difficult to calm down. Sometimes I find it difficult to do nothing, in many cases to relax, especially on the weekends. But this began a few years ago. I talk about this because of the fact that once I had a diagnosis and the associated anxiety connected to it, for me, the only answer to get through this journey was mindfulness. Calming the mind is so empowering. It's so healing. It's so insightful. And it's something that some of us on the autoimmune journey benefit from. Those who are type A, for example, constantly doing things, striving. Mindfulness is a powerful component to bring calm, healing, and wellness into our lives. Once I got diagnosed, I was really scared and I was really stressed out about it. I remember really not knowing what I didn't know, first of all, not knowing what this was going to mean for my life, my future, what it looked like to have a disability, whether I was actually disabled, what disease-modifying drugs were going to look like for the rest of my life, and also what I was going to tell people. How was I going to navigate the PhD journey? I didn't have too many people in my life to talk to about the PhD journey, aside from people in the university and my husband. My family doesn't know much about what the PhD is about. So it's just something that was not well understood in the community, in my community, in my family, in my upbringing. I was a first generation college student. I was the first in my family to attend a university. I knew nothing about what to expect. I knew nothing about that setting of the college experience. I was completely lost. And I think I share this in another episode about how I went to Berkeley. I got in and I was convinced that they made a mistake. And I lived there in complete imposter syndrome for 2 years until I transferred myself out. Navigating the PhD journey, it involved making a lot of personal decisions to graduate, regardless of what this was going to do in my future. I had no idea what this diagnosis meant for me. I had no idea what the prognosis was going to be, what things were going to look like in the future. The wonderful thing is I found out that nobody knows what is going to happen to you in the future. Nobody can predict what you're going to be dealing with. So perhaps we can have some level of connection to that. Perhaps we have some role in what's going to happen to us. So I was sitting in my specialist's office, very terrified with the new diagnosis. He types it in his electronic health system. I never got to see that side, but he typed it in. He was reading it aloud. At least I got to hear what the physician side of the record looked like. Basically, he said I had a classic case of the diagnosis. So no questions there. He turned to me and he said, well, it's not going to kill you. And that was a huge relief because I didn't know what to expect with this diagnosis. But then he said, unless you committed suicide or something. And then I stopped because I was kind of relieved and I was smiling and I stopped and I looked at him and he said, yeah, some people with this diagnosis have a really hard time managing it. They have a really hard time with depression, anxiety, and some people just can't deal with the struggle that they're going through and they commit suicide. That was one of the deciding moments for me as well, where I said, this is not going to be the way I approach this. I'm going to figure this out, how to navigate this, and have an active part in my wellness. So the next time I went to the specialist, a few months later, the nurse was speaking to me at the beginning. What kinds of drugs are you on right now? What kinds of medication? What kinds of vitamins are you taking? Doing that checklist. And she asked me if I had any other symptoms or anything new. I said, no, just still dealing with anxiety and mental health stuff. And she suggested mindfulness-based stress reduction. Why don't you consider this class? This is a program that's done in our department, and I think it could really help you. And so that summer, I remember becoming really interested in the concepts of mindfulness. I wanted to know what it was. It sounded so complicated. It sounded so like it was something that I had never done before. It sounded very new. It sounded like it was this detailed process that was going to involve a lot of training or sitting in a temple or going into some faraway retreat for days and days and doing nothing. It sounded like a monastery. It sounded like a convent. So I took a class. I signed up for the program and I learned about the principles of mindfulness. There were about 9 different aspects of mindfulness. I don't have it with me in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically what those different practices of mindfulness are. There are things like becoming aware, having non-judgment, being aware of the present moment, having a student's mind, always be a learner, and different things like that. So I took the class and I enjoyed it. However, I felt this disconnection with the cultural aspects of mindfulness. And this is something that kind of leads me into where we're at today. The teacher was a white male. Most of the class were white, not all. But what I found interesting is that there were all these cultural artifacts in the room. There was a gong. There was a metallic bowl. There were Mexican blankets, and there were yoga mats. And I just remember feeling like, what is this? He talked about Jon Kabat-Zinn. He talked about how Jon Kabat-Zinn was the founder of mindfulness in the West and how he had brought it over from the East. And I enjoyed the class a lot. I really did. But at the end of it, I decided that it was not going to work for me. I think anyone would, in many cases, say, stop looking at those things and just take the class and just learn. You're going to learn a lot about mindfulness. I said, no, I want someone else to teach me the principles of mindfulness because I just saw so much cultural artifact, exhibition, and it just wasn't working for me. And so that leads me to multicultural mindful wellness. And that was a class I taught earlier in the year to see how we could connect the principles of mindfulness to our own multicultural practices, connecting them to our unique family backgrounds, cultures, values, and ways of connecting with the world. And that was multicultural mindful wellness. That led me into getting really interested in mindfulness practices. I do listen to authors and I read books by white men who talk about mindfulness practices because ultimately that's really what there is out there. I've learned some really great things. For example, the body scan, which is very common as a practice. It's one of the foundational practices. There's also the loving kindness meditation, which is also a very common practice. There are a few others that are quite standard among the various mindfulness textbooks out there. But my goal is to become one of the mindfulness experts who values multicultural inclusion. Mindfulness has changed my life in many ways because of the fact that I started to be able to notice even more the different ways in which the autoimmune diagnosis was affecting me and to notice things more quickly. So before the relapse, I was noticing symptoms that led me into the relapse 2 weeks later. I was catching on to what was happening in the body and noticing things that were not normal. Through that body scan practice, we're able to do that. I was able to get a clearer idea of the questions I wanted to ask my practitioner, my specialist, before I went in to the meeting. As many of us know, when you go into your specialist, sometimes you forget what you want to say. Sometimes you forget what you came in for, what those details are of the questions and needs and concerns that you had. It kind of goes out the window once you're sitting in the office and they have a limited amount of time to talk to you and they're rushed and you're just sitting there absorbing everything. It's kind of a shock situation sometimes. So the mindfulness practice helped me to get clearer on what it is I wanted to get out of the experience with the specialist appointment. It also helped me to question medications, alternative therapies as options, and also decide when or how to use medication, whether to switch medication and make those decisions. I'm very grateful for my specialist because he does allow me to make those decisions. The first medication I took after 6 months didn't work. And he said, well, you could try another 6 months. You could stop taking it, or you can try something new. So I appreciated that. And having that option to make the decision, to choose what I wanted to try next, being given the options, but at the same time, being given the ability, the authority to make the decision for myself. A lot of this is related to the mindfulness experience. That sense of awareness that in stressful moments of time, we're not able to make those clear decisions. For example, when you're hungry and it's really hard to think, it's really hard to decide what to eat. It's really hard to think about the healthy option, how to prepare it. Even though preparation may take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, when you're really hungry, it's really hard to think about that process. Tired, dizzy, cranky, and so on. It's really difficult. So the mindfulness experience can help you through that practice. At the moment, we are in registration, currently running the 12-week Autoimmune Mindful Wellness course. In Autoimmune Mindful Wellness, in this course, we cover 3 aspects of mindfulness. And if you check out my blog, I actually go into more detail on what these different levels of mindfulness look like. What is meditation? What is visualization and guided imagery? And what is transcendental meditation? Over the past couple of years, I've gone into various trainings and experiences to learn what all of these different things mean. If you visit episode number 19, I believe, maybe 18, it's called Visualization, Meditation, and Guided Imagery, something like that. Our most popular episode by far. My average listener is in the double digits, but this one's in the triple. This one's in the hundreds. Everything's set up in 3 weeks. Mind, body, spirit, and environment. The first 3 weeks covers the power of the mind. So we begin with the body scan. We talk about the meditation process, the intuitive process of meditation. Week 2, we cover guided imagery and working with that process to build mental wellness. We also, in week 3, will cover active visualization and affirmation, the guided practice, so that you can actually lead visualization practice individually as well. From weeks 4 through 6, we cover the body scan. We cover body and physical wellness. We work on how to relax each part of the body, taking personal notes of what's happening in the body and identifying intuitively what we need to make changes to. In week 5, we cover the gratitude practice. We cover intuitive meditation for pain, dizziness, groundedness, headaches, and stress relief. In week 6, we cover the practice of affirmations and meditation and active visualization for healing. The power of visualization for healing has real benefits. We've heard firsthand from several people about how they've lived with chronic pain, and through visualization of light going through the body, they've been able to feel distinct improvements where they're able to get out of bed for the first time in months. And then from 7 through 9, week 7 through 9, we cover spiritual wellness. Spiritual wellness in terms of who we are as individuals and our own personal connection to the higher source of power, God, spirit, however you practice your faith practice. In week 7, we talk about that self-connection to spirit and getting that assessment of how close we've been to our source of spiritual energy at the current time. Is there something that we feel a pull toward moving forward into further dedication, further connection to our higher power? In week 8, we cover spiritual meditation and connecting to our higher source to ask important questions and insight, kind of like your retreat experience, getting those answers to major questions. And then in week 9, we go into this is my favorite, we go into the topic of glow and flow, these 2 states, which are connected. What the glow state is and the flow state. We cover those because they are the salt, they are the light, they are the spirit of joy and living. They make it make sense. And then in week 10, 11, and 12, we cover environmental wellness. To me, this is possibly the most profound of all because it puts a lot of these things together. From a public health perspective, environment covers so many things. We talk about the social determinants of health. We talk about how your zip code can determine your lifespan. And it's a very profound way of thinking. When you think about environmental wellness, we're looking at how your environment, your air, water, noise, safety, and many other factors influence you, how you grew up, the influences around you from family members, the messages that you've been given, the visual and the not visual aspects of environmental factors, the things we grew up with, the city we live in, the good and bad aspects of our environment, what's going well, what can be improved. Week 11, we go into understanding the gratitude practice of knowing that what we were given is a gift. What is around us is a gift, whether it's a positive gift or a gift of learning. And then in week 12, we cover active meditation for the second aspect of environmental wellness, which is what's your role in the universe? What is your role in the community? How are you living in your purpose? How are you impacting and influencing the people around you? I talk a lot about leadership theory. Leadership theory states that the person with the most power is the one who's most willing to give it away. You think about a servant leader, you think about someone who's selfless, or you think about someone who is willing to share the mission and let others move forward in that mission, giving them the power to make those decisions for that shared purpose, that shared goal. Thinking about how you influence others? What role are you playing to be a gift in someone else's day? What role are you playing to serve in your purpose and motivation for everyday living? So this is the 12-week program of Autoimmune Mindful Wellness. I think it's a very profound program. It covers all aspects of living. We talk about 4 domains, but really it's 10 dimensions of wellness for the most part, which includes environmental, career, financial, occupational, and so on, nutritional, and many more. So if you're interested in signing up for registration, we start very soon. We start on August the 5th. So sign up at aprilmorenophd.com/AMW. AMW as in Autoimmune Mindful Wellness. You have the option of making a single payment or a monthly payment over 3 months. I think it's an experience that is going to be very enlightening and life-changing for you this summer. I think this is a perfect time to reassess and reevaluate who we are as individuals, living with chronic illness, as a teacher, as a guide, and how we are going to turn that around and live in our purpose. So I hope you'll join us. aprilmorenophd.com/AMW. I hope you enjoyed this episode as I talk about all these different aspects of mindfulness and awareness, getting in touch with our identity, our purpose, who we are as individuals, and who we feel called to become. Considering autoimmune disease as a teacher, as a guide, as a source of insight and a source of self-reflection and even empowerment. So I hope you'll join us for either the Summer Mindfulness Sessions on Wednesday, which are free, or for the Autoimmune Mindful Wellness course. And I hope you're enjoying your summer. I've just been talking to you, looking at the beautiful birds flying around in my yard, hopping from flower to flower onto branches and leaves. A really fun mindfulness experience. So I hope you enjoy your day and take good care out there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast, Season 2. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Look forward to having you join us in upcoming episodes as well, where we continue to talk about integrative wellness and autoimmune living our best lives, being our own best advocates. Feel free to subscribe on iTunes to the podcast, and we are also available on several other locations as well. For more information about Dr. April Moreno, you can visit aprilmorenophd.com. Take care.